A poor woman calls a millionaire's phone. What she said made him make a decision that left everyone in shock. Welcome to the channel. Enjoy the video, give it a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, comment and share. The shrill ring of the telephone pierced the quiet Boston evening, echoing through the dimly lit apartment. Olivia Turner's hand trembled as she reached for the receiver, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and dread. She had been waiting for this call for weeks, praying for a miracle that seemed increasingly unlikely with each passing day. Taking a deep breath, she answered, her voice barely above a whisper. "Hello? Is this Olivia Turner?" The voice on the other end was deep and authoritative, belonging to a man Olivia had never met, but whose name had become a lifeline in recent weeks. "Yes, this is she," Olivia replied, her free hand clutching the fabric of her worn bathrobe. "Mrs. Turner, this is James Hawkins from Hawkins Department Store. I'm calling about your application." Olivia's breath caught in her throat. This was it, the moment that could change everything. She had applied for a position as a sales associate at the upscale Hawkins Department Store, desperate for any job that could help her make ends meet. As a single mother and recently divorced high school teacher, Olivia's finances were stretched to the breaking point. "Yes, Mr. Hawkins. Thank you for calling." She struggled to keep her voice steady, aware that her entire future might hinge on this conversation. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Olivia could hear the shuffling of papers. Her mind raced, imagining the worst. Was he calling to reject her application, to tell her she wasn't qualified, that they had found someone better? "Mrs. Turner, I've reviewed your application thoroughly," Mr. Hawkins began, his tone neutral. "And I must say, I'm quite perplexed." Olivia's heart sank. "Perplexed, sir?" "Yes. You see, your qualifications are far beyond what we typically look for in a sales associate. You have a master's degree in education, years of teaching experience, and glowing references from your previous school. Frankly, I'm wondering why someone with your background is applying for an entry-level retail position." The question hung in the air, heavy with unspoken implications. Olivia closed her eyes, fighting back tears. She hadn't wanted to pour out her life story in the application, but now she realized she might have no choice. Taking a deep breath, she decided to take a risk and be honest. "Mr. Hawkins, the truth is I'm desperate," Olivia admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "I recently went through a difficult divorce, and I'm struggling to provide for my 8-year-old daughter, Emily. My teaching position was cut due to budget constraints, and I've been unable to find work in my field. I know I'm overqualified for this job, but I'm willing to do anything to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Olivia's heart raced, wondering if she had said too much, if she had ruined her chances with her emotional outburst. Finally, Mr. Hawkins spoke, his voice softer than before. "Mrs. Turner, I appreciate your honesty. It's not often that I encounter someone in your situation. Tell me, if you were to get this job, how would it impact your life?" Olivia took a moment to compose herself before answering. "Mr. Hawkins, this job would mean everything to us. It would allow me to pay our rent, buy groceries without worrying, and maybe even start saving for Emily's future. More than that, it would give me hope. Hope that things can get better, and that we can start rebuilding our lives." As she spoke, Olivia could hear Emily stirring in the next room. Her daughter had been so brave through all of this, never complaining even when they had to move to a smaller apartment or when her favorite after-school activities had to be cut. Olivia's determination grew stronger, fueled by her love for her child. "I understand, Mrs. Turner," Mr. Hawkins said, his tone thoughtful. "Your situation is certainly unique. I must admit, I'm impressed by your willingness to do whatever it takes to provide for your family. That kind of dedication is rare these days." Olivia held her breath, hardly daring to hope. Was he considering her for the position? "I've made a decision," Mr. Hawkins continued. "I'd like to offer you a position, but not as a sales associate." Olivia's heart sank. "Oh, I see," she said, trying to mask her disappointment. "No, Mrs. Turner, you misunderstand," Mr. Hawkins quickly added. "I'd like to offer you a position as our new customer relations manager. It's a role that requires someone with excellent communication skills, empathy, and the ability to handle complex situations. All qualities that I believe you possess in abundance." Olivia gasped, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Mr. Hawkins, I don't know what to say. Are you sure?" "Absolutely," he replied, a smile evident in his voice. "The position comes with a significantly higher salary than the sales associate role, full benefits, and a more flexible schedule that should allow you to be there for your daughter. What do you say, Mrs. Turner? Are you interested? Tears of joy and relief streamed down Olivia's face. Yes, Mr. Hawkins. Yes, I'm interested. Thank you so much for this opportunity. You have no idea what this means to me and Emily. Wonderful, Mr. Hawkins said warmly. I look forward to meeting you in person. Can you come to the store tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to discuss the details and sign the paperwork? Of course, I'll be there, Olivia assured him, her mind already racing with the possibilities this new job would bring. As she hung up the phone, Olivia sat in stunned silence for a moment, hardly able to believe the turn her fortune had taken. Then, with a burst of energy, she rushed to Emily's room, eager to share the good news with her daughter. Emily, sweetie, wake up, Olivia said softly, gently shaking her daughter's shoulder. Emily stirred, rubbing her eyes sleepily. What is it, Mom? Is everything okay? Olivia sat on the edge of the bed, gathering her daughter into a tight hug. Everything's more than okay, sweetheart. Mommy just got a new job, a really good job. Things are going to get better for us now, I promise. As Emily's eyes lit up with excitement, Olivia felt a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time in months, she felt hope blossoming in her chest. Little did she know this phone call was just the beginning of a series of events that would change her life in ways she could never have imagined. The next morning, Olivia stood in front of her wardrobe, scrutinizing her limited options. She settled on a simple black skirt and a crisp white blouse. Professional, yet not overstated. As she applied a touch of makeup, she caught sight of her reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back at her looked different somehow. There was a spark in her eyes that had been missing for far too long. You can do this, she whispered to herself, smoothing down her skirt one last time before heading out. The walk to Hawkins' department store was brisk, the cool autumn air nipping at Olivia's cheeks. As she approached the imposing building, its large display windows showcasing the latest fashions, she felt a flutter of nerves in her stomach. This was it. Her chance at a new beginning. Pushing through the revolving doors, Olivia was immediately enveloped by the hushed elegance of the store. The scent of perfume lingered in the air, and soft classical music played overhead. She made her way to the information desk, where a smartly dressed young woman greeted her with a polite smile. Good morning, welcome to Hawkins. How may I assist you today? Good morning, Olivia replied, trying to keep her voice steady. I'm Olivia Turner. I have an appointment with Mr. James Hawkins. The woman's eyebrows raised slightly, and her smile became a touch warmer. Of course, Mrs. Turner. Mr. Hawkins is expecting you. Please, follow me. As they wound their way through the store, Olivia couldn't help but marvel at the luxury surrounding her. Designer clothes, sparkling jewelry, and high-end home goods filled every corner. It was a far cry from the discount stores she had been frequenting lately. They arrived at an elevator tucked away in a discreet corner of the store. The young woman pressed the button for the top floor and stepped back. Mr. Hawkins's office is straight ahead when you exit the elevator. Best of luck, Mrs. Turner. Olivia thanked her and stepped into the elevator, her heart racing as she watched the numbers climb. When the doors opened, she found herself in a plush corridor lined with artwork. At the end of the hall stood an imposing oak door with a brass nameplate. James Hawkins, owner and CEO. Taking a deep breath, Olivia knocked on the door. Come in, called a familiar voice from inside. Olivia stepped into the office, immediately struck by the panoramic view of Boston's skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Behind a large mahogany desk sat James Hawkins, a man in his mid-50s with salt-and-pepper hair and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Ah, Mrs. Turner, he said, rising to greet her. It's a pleasure to finally meet you in person. Please have a seat. As Olivia sat down, she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something familiar about Mr. Hawkins, though she was certain they had never met before. She pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. Thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Hawkins, she began. I can't express how much it means to me. Mr. Hawkins waved his hand dismissively. No need to thank me, Mrs. Turner. I have a good feeling about you. And I trust my instincts when it comes to people. He leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. Now, before we get to the paperwork, there's something I'd like to discuss with you, something that might come as a bit of a shock. Olivia felt her heart skip a beat. What could he possibly mean? Mr. Hawkins's expression turned serious. Mrs. Turner, the reason I was so interested in your application, the reason I called you personally instead of having HR handle it, is because, well, I believe we may be connected in a way neither of us realized until now. Olivia felt her breath catch in her throat. Connected? What could he possibly mean? She leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. I'm not sure I understand, Mr. Hawkins. How could we be connected? James Hawkins took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. Mrs. Turner, what was your maiden name? The question caught Olivia off guard. It was Foster. Olivia Foster. A flicker of emotion passed over Mr. Hawkins's face. Was it recognition? Sadness? Olivia couldn't quite tell. Foster, he repeated softly. Tell me, Mrs. Turner, did you ever know your father? Olivia's heart began to race. This conversation was taking a turn she never expected. No, I never did. My mother told me he left before I was born. She never spoke much about him. Mr. Hawkins nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. And your mother's name? Sarah. Sarah Foster. At the mention of her mother's name, Mr. Hawkins closed his eyes briefly, a pained expression crossing his face. When he opened them again, they were filled with a mixture of regret and hope. Mrs. Turner, Olivia, I believe I may be your father. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Olivia felt as if the ground had suddenly shifted beneath her feet. Her mind raced, trying to process this bombshell revelation. What? How is that possible? She stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Mr. Hawkins, could he really be her father? Leaned back in his chair, his expression a mixture of apprehension and hope. It was over 30 years ago. I met your mother, Sarah, when we were both young and ambitious. We had a whirlwind romance, but I was focused on building my business, and she was pursuing her dreams of becoming a writer. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. He paused, shame evident in his voice. I made the biggest mistake of my life. I told her I wasn't ready to be a father, that I couldn't give her and the baby the life you deserved. I offered financial support, but Sarah was too proud. She told me she wanted nothing from me, that she would raise the child on her own. Olivia sat in stunned silence, her mind reeling. All her life, she had wondered about her father, created countless scenarios in her head about who he might be and why he had left. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined this. But why now? She finally managed to ask. Why reach out after all these years? Mr. Hawkins leaned forward, his eyes pleading. I've regretted my decision every day since I made it. I tried to find Sarah and you many times over the years, but she had disappeared. It wasn't until I saw your application, with your maiden name and your mother's name as a reference, that I realized I might have finally found you. Olivia's mind was spinning. Could this really be happening? Was the owner of this prestigious department store, this successful businessman, really her long-lost father? And if so, how should she feel about it? I don't know what to say, Olivia admitted, her voice trembling. This is all so overwhelming. Mr. Hawkins nodded understandingly. I know this is a lot to take in, Olivia. I don't expect you to forgive me or to welcome me into your life with open arms. All I ask is for a chance to get to know you, to be a part of your life in whatever way you're comfortable with. As Olivia sat there trying to process this life-altering revelation, a knock on the door interrupted their conversation. Come in, Mr. Hawkins called, his voice slightly strained. The door opened to reveal a man in his mid-30s, dressed in a sharp suit. He had dark hair and striking green eyes that immediately locked onto Olivia. I'm sorry to interrupt, Dad, but... He stopped short, noticing the tension in the room. Is everything all right? Olivia's eyes widened at the word Dad. This must be Mr. Hawkins's son, which meant... Daniel, come in, Mr. Hawkins said, gesturing for the man to enter. There's someone I'd like you to meet. He turned to Olivia, his expression a mixture of nervousness and hope. Olivia, this is my son, Daniel Hawkins. Daniel, this is Olivia Turner. She's your sister. Daniel's jaw dropped, his eyes darting between his father and Olivia. My sister? Dad, what are you talking about? As Mr. Hawkins began to explain the situation, Olivia felt as if she were watching the scene unfold from outside her body. A father she never knew she had, a brother she never knew existed. It was all too much to process. I think I need some air, Olivia said abruptly, standing up. Excuse me. She rushed out of the office, ignoring the calls of both Hawkins' men behind her. She made her way to the elevator, her mind in a fog. As the doors closed, she leaned against the wall, trying to catch her breath. When she stepped out onto the main floor of the store, the bustling activity and soft music felt surreal, as if she had stepped into another world. She wandered aimlessly, barely noticing the luxurious displays around her. "Excuse me, miss, are you all right?" Olivia turned to find a concerned-looking man watching her. He was handsome, with kind brown eyes and a gentle smile. His name tag read, James, Assistant Manager. I'm not sure," Olivia admitted, feeling tears welling up in her eyes. James glanced around, then gently guided her to a quiet corner of the store. "Here, why don't you sit down for a moment? Can I get you some water?" Olivia nodded gratefully, sinking into a plush armchair. As James went to fetch her some water, she tried to gather her thoughts. How had a simple job interview turned into this life-altering event? James returned with a glass of water and a kind smile. "Here you go. Is there someone I can call for you?" Olivia took a sip of water, the cool liquid helping to calm her nerves. "No, thank you. I just received some unexpected news. I'm not quite sure how to handle it." James nodded sympathetically. "Sometimes life throws us curveballs we never see coming, but in my experience, things have a way of working themselves out if we give them time." His words, though simple, provided a small measure of comfort. Olivia found herself studying his face, struck by his genuine kindness. There was something about him that made her feel at ease, despite the turmoil of her emotions. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'm Olivia, by the way. Nice to meet you." "Olivia," James replied with a warm smile. "I'm James. Is there anything else I can do to help?" Before Olivia could respond, she heard her name being called. She looked up to see Daniel Hawkins approaching, his face a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Olivia, wait," he said as he reached them. "Please, can we talk?" James looked between them, sensing the tension. "Is everything okay here?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, thank you. I can take it from here." As James reluctantly walked away, casting one last concerned glance at Olivia, she turned to face Daniel, her newly discovered brother. The thought still felt foreign, unreal. "I know this is a lot to take in," Daniel began, his voice low and earnest. "Believe me, I'm just as shocked as you are, but I'd really like a chance to get to know you, if you're willing." Olivia took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I don't know, Daniel. This is all so sudden. I came here expecting a job interview, and instead I've gained a father and a brother I never knew existed. It's overwhelming." Daniel nodded understandingly. "I can only imagine. Look, why don't we start small? Maybe we could get coffee sometime, just to talk. No pressure, no expectations, just two people getting to know each other." As Olivia considered his offer, she couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. Fear, excitement, curiosity, and a glimmer of hope all swirled within her. Could this unexpected turn of events be the beginning of something positive in her life? "Okay," she finally said, surprising even herself. "Coffee sounds nice." Daniel's face lit up with a genuine smile. "Great. Here, let me give you my number." As they exchanged contact information, Olivia felt a strange sense of calm settling over her. The world as she knew it had shifted dramatically in the span of an hour, but somehow she felt that things might just work out. Little did she know this was just the beginning of a journey that would test her in ways she never imagined, bringing new challenges, unexpected alliances, and perhaps even a chance at love. As she left Hawkins' department store that day, Olivia Turner stepped into a new chapter of her life, one filled with mystery, family secrets, and the promise of a future she never dared to dream of. The following weeks were a whirlwind for Olivia. She started her new job as customer relations manager at Hawkins' department store, throwing herself into the work as a welcome distraction from the emotional turmoil of her personal life. The position was challenging but rewarding, allowing her to use her skills in ways she never imagined. Despite her initial reservations, Olivia found herself gradually warming to the idea of getting to know her newfound family. She and Daniel had met for coffee several times, their conversations growing easier and more natural with each meeting. He was kind and genuinely interested in her life, asking about Emily and listening attentively as Olivia shared stories of her teaching career and the challenges of single motherhood. Mr. Hawkins, James Sr. as she had started to think of him, had been respectful of her need for space, but his presence loomed large in her mind. The weight of their shared history and the years of absence hung between them, unspoken but ever present. One crisp autumn morning, as Olivia was reviewing customer feedback reports in her office, a soft knock on the door interrupted her concentration. "Come in," she called, looking up from her computer. The door opened to reveal James, the assistant manager who had comforted her on that tumultuous first day. He smiled warmly as he entered, a stack of papers in his hand. "Good morning, Olivia," he said, his brown eyes crinkling at the corners. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." Olivia found herself smiling back, a flutter of something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. "Not at all, James. What can I do for you?" He held up the papers. "I have the customer satisfaction surveys from last month. I thought you might want to go over them together, see if we can identify any trends." "That sounds great," Olivia replied, gesturing for him to take a seat. As James settled into the chair across from her desk, she couldn't help but notice how at ease she felt in his presence. They spent the next hour poring over the surveys, their heads bent close together as they analyzed the data. Olivia was impressed by James's insight and dedication to improving the customer experience. As they worked, their hands occasionally brushed, sending tiny sparks of electricity through Olivia's body. Just as they were wrapping up, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Daniel. "Hey sis, are we still on for lunch today?" Olivia's eyes widened as she realized she had completely forgotten about their lunch plans. "Oh no," she muttered. James looked up, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay?" Olivia sighed, running a hand through her hair. "I completely forgot I had lunch plans with Daniel today. I've been so caught up in work." A flicker of something, disappointment, passed over James's face before he schooled his features into a supportive smile. "You should go. Family is important." Olivia hesitated for a moment, torn between her growing connection with James and her commitment to building a relationship with her newfound brother. Finally, she nodded. "You're right. Thanks for understanding, James." As she gathered her things to leave, James spoke up again. "Olivia, I was wondering, would you like to grab dinner sometime? Outside of work, I mean." Olivia froze, her heart skipping a beat. Was James asking her out on a date? The thought both thrilled and terrified her. It had been so long since she'd even considered the possibility of a romantic relationship. I'd like that," she found herself saying, a shy smile spreading across her face. James beamed, his whole face lighting up. "Great! How about Friday night?" They made plans for dinner, and Olivia left the office with a spring in her step, her earlier stress forgotten. As she made her way to the cafe where she was meeting Daniel, she couldn't help but feel a sense of hope blossoming in her chest. The cafe was bustling with the lunchtime crowd when Olivia arrived. She spotted Daniel at a corner table, his brow furrowed as he studied something on his phone. As she approached, he looked up, his face breaking into a smile. "Hey, Olivia," he greeted her warmly. "I was starting to worry you'd forgotten about me." Olivia felt a pang of guilt as she sat down. "I'm so sorry, Daniel. Work has been crazy, and I completely lost track of time." Daniel waved off her apology. "No worries, I'm just glad you're here now. How's everything going?" As they settled into conversation, Olivia found herself relaxing. She shared stories about Emily's latest school project and her own experiences adjusting to her new role at the store. Daniel listened attentively, offering advice and encouragement. "You know," he said during a lull in the conversation, "Dad's been asking about you." Olivia tensed slightly at the mention of James Sr. "Oh?" Daniel nodded, his expression turning serious. "He really wants to make things right, Olivia. I know it's complicated, but maybe you could give him a chance." Olivia sighed, stirring her coffee absently. "I don't know, Daniel. It's all still so overwhelming. Finding out he's my father, that I have a brother, it's a lot to process." "I understand," Daniel said softly. "But Olivia, there's something you should know. Dad, he's not well." Olivia's head snapped up, her eyes wide. "What do you mean?" Daniel leaned in, lowering his voice. "He's been having some health issues. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but it's serious. He hasn't told anyone outside the family, but I think you deserve to know." The news hit Olivia like a punch to the gut. Despite her conflicted feelings about James Sr., the thought of him being ill filled her with an unexpected sense of dread. I had no idea," she whispered. Daniel reached across the table, gently squeezing her hand. "He doesn't want pity, and he certainly doesn't want to use this to manipulate you. But Olivia, if there's any part of you that wants to know him, to understand where you come from, now might be the time." Olivia nodded slowly, her mind racing. Could she open her heart to the father who had abandoned her before she was born? The man who, despite his absence, had given her this unexpected second chance at a better life. As she left the cafe after lunch, Olivia's emotions were in turmoil. The joy of her growing friendship with Daniel, the excitement of her dinner plans with James, and now the weight of her father's illness, all swirled together in a confusing mix. Lost in thought, she nearly collided with someone on the sidewalk. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she exclaimed, looking up to apologize. Her words died in her throat as she recognized the woman standing before her. It was Sophie Chen, her best friend from her teaching days, whom she hadn't seen in months. "Olivia?" Sophie gasped, her eyes wide with surprise. "Oh my God, it's been forever!" The two women embraced, both talking excitedly at once. As they pulled apart, Olivia noticed something different about her friend. Sophie was glowing, her hand resting protectively on a small but noticeable baby bump. "Sophie, you're pregnant!" Olivia exclaimed, joy momentarily pushing aside her other concerns. "Congratulations!" Sophie's smile faltered slightly, a shadow passing over her face. "Thanks, Liv. It's been quite a journey." Sensing there was more to the story, Olivia suggested they grab a quick coffee. As they settled into a nearby cafe, Sophie's cheerful facade crumbled. "Oh, Liv," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what to do. The baby's father. He wants nothing to do with us. He said he never wanted children, that it would ruin his career. I'm all alone, and I'm terrified." Olivia's heart ached for her friend. She reached across the table, squeezing Sophie's hand. "You're not alone. Sophie, I'm here for you, whatever you need." As Sophie poured out her fears and doubts, Olivia found herself sharing her own recent experiences, her new job, her newfound family, and the unexpected complications that had arisen. By the time they parted ways, both women felt lighter, buoyed by the rekindling of their friendship. Olivia promised to stay in touch, making plans to help Sophie prepare for the baby's arrival. As she walked home that evening, Olivia's mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. The day had brought so many unexpected turns: James's dinner invitation, the news of her father's illness, the reunion with Sophie. She felt as though she was standing on the edge of a great precipice, about to plunge into unknown waters. Little did she know, the coming weeks would bring even more surprises, testing her resilience and forcing her to confront long-buried truths. As she unlocked the door to her apartment, where Emily waited with their babysitter, Olivia took a deep breath, steeling herself for whatever challenges lay ahead. The mystery of her past, the promise of new beginnings, and the complexities of her present all converged, setting the stage for a journey that would change her life forever. And somewhere in the back of her mind, a nagging question persisted. What other secrets might be lurking in the shadows of her newfound family's history? The following Friday evening found Olivia standing in front of her bedroom mirror, smoothing down the front of her dress nervously. It had been years since she'd been on a proper date, and the butterflies in her stomach reminded her of her high school days. Emily sat on the bed, swinging her legs and watching her mother with curious eyes. "You look pretty, Mum," Emily said, a small smile on her face. "Is this a special dinner?" Olivia turned to her daughter, her heart swelling with love. "Thank you, sweetie. And yes, it is kind of special. Remember James from the store? We're having dinner together tonight." Emily's eyes widened. "Is he your boyfriend now?" Olivia chuckled, sitting down next to her daughter. "No, honey. We're just friends getting to know each other better. But I want you to know that no matter what happens, you'll always be the most important person in my life." "Okay?" Emily nodded solemnly, then wrapped her arms around Olivia in a tight hug. As Olivia held her daughter close, she silently thanked whatever twist of fate had brought them to this moment of possibility and hope. The babysitter arrived, and after giving Emily a final kiss goodbye, Olivia headed out into the crisp autumn evening. She and James had agreed to meet at a cozy Italian restaurant downtown, known for its intimate atmosphere and delicious homemade pasta. As she approached the restaurant, Olivia spotted James waiting outside, looking handsome in a navy blazer and crisp white shirt. When he saw her, his face lit up with a warm smile that made Olivia's heart skip a beat. "Olivia," he greeted her, leaning in to kiss her cheek. "You look absolutely beautiful." Olivia felt a blush creep up her neck. "Thank you, James. You look very handsome yourself." They entered the restaurant, the soft lighting and gentle music creating a romantic ambiance. As they settled into their seats and perused the menu, Olivia found herself relaxing, the nervous energy giving way to genuine enjoyment of James's company. Their conversation flowed easily, touching on their shared love of literature, their experiences growing up in different parts of the country, and their dreams for the future. As they savored their meal, Olivia felt a connection with James that she hadn't experienced in years. Just as they were finishing their main course, Olivia's phone buzzed insistently in her purse. She tried to ignore it, but when it buzzed again, she apologized to James and checked the screen. It was Daniel calling for the second time in as many minutes. "I'm so sorry," she said to James, a knot of worry forming in her stomach. "It's my brother. He wouldn't call twice unless it was important. Do you mind if I take this?" James nodded understandingly. "Of course. Go ahead." Olivia stepped outside the restaurant, her hands shaking slightly as she answered the call. "Daniel, what's wrong?" "Olivia, thank God." Daniel's voice was tight with stress. "It's Dad. He's in the hospital. He collapsed at home and it's not good. The doctors are running tests, but they think it might be his heart." Olivia felt as though the ground had dropped out from beneath her feet. Despite her complicated feelings toward James Sr., the thought of him seriously ill filled her with a surprising sense of dread and sadness. "I'm on my way," she heard herself say. "Which hospital?" After getting the details from Daniel, Olivia rushed back into the restaurant. James took one look at her pale face and stood up, concern etched in his features. "Olivia, what's happened?" he asked, gently touching her arm. "It's my father," she explained, her voice shaking. "He's in the hospital. I'm so sorry, James, but I need to go." Understanding dawned on James's face. Without hesitation, he signaled for the check. "I'll drive you. You're in no state to be behind the wheel right now." Gratitude washed over Olivia. "Thank you," she whispered, allowing James to guide her out of the restaurant and to his car. The drive to the hospital was a blur. Olivia's mind raced with 1,000 thoughts and emotions. What if James Sr. died before she had a chance to truly know him? What if this was all an elaborate ruse to manipulate her emotions? And beneath it all, a gnawing fear that she might lose this newfound connection to her past before she even had a chance to understand it. As they rushed into the hospital, Olivia spotted Daniel pacing in the waiting room. His face was drawn with worry, but he managed a small smile when he saw her. "Olivia, you're here," he said, pulling her into a quick hug. As they separated, he noticed James standing awkwardly to the side. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were with someone." Olivia made quick introductions, her mind still reeling. "How is he?" she asked Daniel, unable to keep the tremor from her voice. Daniel ran a hand through his hair, his exhaustion evident. "They're still running tests. The doctor should be out soon to give us an update." As if on cue, a tall woman in a white coat approached them. "Family of James Hawkins?" she inquired, looking between them. "Yes, that's us," Daniel replied quickly. "I'm his son, and this is his daughter, Olivia." The words hung in the air, the first time Olivia had been publicly acknowledged as James Sr.'s daughter. The doctor nodded, her expression serious. "Mr. Hawkins has suffered a mild heart attack," she explained. "We've stabilized him, but he'll need to undergo some procedures to prevent future episodes. The next 24 hours will be critical." Olivia felt James's hand on her back, a comforting presence as she processed the news. "Can we see him?" she asked, surprising herself with the urgency in her voice. The doctor nodded. "He's resting now, but you can go in briefly. Just immediate family for now," she added, with an apologetic glance at James. James squeezed Olivia's hand. "Go," he said softly. "I'll wait here." Olivia and Daniel followed the doctor down the sterile hallway. As they approached James Sr.'s room, Olivia felt her heart racing. She paused at the doorway, suddenly unsure. Daniel looked at her questioningly. "Olivia, are you okay?" She took a deep breath, steeling herself. I never imagined our first real conversation would be like this." Daniel nodded understandingly. "He'd want you here. Olivia, trust me." They entered the room together. James Sr. lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller and more vulnerable than Olivia had ever seen him. His eyes were closed, his chest rising and falling steadily beneath the tangle of wires and tubes. As they approached the bed, James Sr.'s eyes fluttered open. His gaze moved from Daniel to Olivia, a mix of surprise and something else. Relief? Joy? Crossing his face. "Olivia," he whispered, his voice weak but filled with emotion. "You came." Olivia felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. "Of course I came," she said softly, surprised by the depth of feeling in her own voice. James Sr. reached out a trembling hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Olivia took it. As their fingers intertwined, she felt a connection she had never known she was missing, the touch of a parent, flawed and human, but hers. "I'm so sorry," James Sr. said, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. "For everything. I know I can never make up for the years we lost, but if you'll let me, I'd like to try." Olivia felt the walls she had built around her heart begin to crumble. "I'd like that," she whispered, surprising herself with the truth of the words. As they sat there, father and daughter reunited under the most unexpected circumstances, Olivia felt a shift in her world. The anger and resentment she had carried for so long began to give way to something else, a cautious hope for the future, and a growing curiosity about the past she had never known. But even as she allowed herself to embrace this newfound connection, a small voice in the back of her mind whispered a warning. There were still so many unanswered questions, so many gaps in the story of her family's history. What other secrets might be lurking beneath the surface, waiting to be uncovered? As the night wore on, with Daniel and Olivia taking turns sitting with their father, the seeds of a mystery began to take root. Little did they know that the events set in motion by James Sr.'s illness would lead them down a path of discovery, forcing them to confront long-buried truths and testing the bonds of their newly formed family in ways they could never have imagined. The weeks following James Sr.'s heart attack were a whirlwind of hospital visits, family discussions, and emotional revelations. As James Sr. slowly recovered, Olivia found herself drawn deeper into the complex web of her newfound family's history. One rainy afternoon, as Olivia sat by her father's hospital bed, James Sr. turned to her with a serious expression. "Olivia, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice low and filled with trepidation. "Something I should have told you from the beginning." Olivia felt her heart rate quicken. "What is it, Dad?" The word Dad still felt foreign on her tongue, but she was slowly growing accustomed to it. James Sr. took a deep breath. "Your mother, Sarah, she wasn't just a brief romance from my past. She was my first love and my first wife." Olivia's eyes widened in shock. "What? But I thought you were married before." James Sr. nodded solemnly. "We married young, right out of college. We were so in love, but we were also ambitious. I was starting my business and Sarah was pursuing her writing career. We thought we could have it all." He paused, his eyes distant with memories. "But the pressure of building my company took its toll. We started arguing more, growing apart. When Sarah told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I wasn't ready to be a father, and I foolishly thought my dreams of success were more important than our family." Olivia listened, her heart aching for the young couple they had been, for the family that could have been. "What happened then?" she asked softly. "I asked for a divorce," James Sr. admitted, shame evident in his voice. "Sarah was heartbroken, but she agreed. She said she didn't want to trap me in a life I didn't want. She left Boston, and I threw myself into building Hawkins' department store. It wasn't until years later, when I married Daniel's mother, that I realized the magnitude of my mistake." As James Sr. continued his story, revealing years of regret and futile attempts to locate Sarah and Olivia, neither of them noticed Daniel standing in the doorway, his face a mask of shock and betrayal. Later that evening, as Olivia left the hospital, her mind reeling from the revelations, she found Daniel waiting for her in the parking lot. His expression was stormy, his body tense with barely contained anger. "Were you ever going to tell me?" he demanded as soon as she approached. Olivia frowned, confused. "Tell you what, Daniel? That you're not just my half-sister, that our father was married to your mother first, that everything I thought I knew about our family is a lie." Daniel's voice rose with each accusation. Olivia felt her heart sink. "Daniel, I only just found out myself. I would never keep something like that from you." Daniel's anger seemed to deflate slightly, replaced by a look of hurt and confusion. "I don't understand. Why would he keep this a secret for so long? What else isn't he telling us?" As they stood there in the dim light of the parking lot, Olivia realized that the mystery surrounding her family was far from solved. If anything, it had only deepened. Over the next few days, as James Sr. prepared to be discharged from the hospital, tensions ran high in the Hawkins family. Daniel struggled to come to terms with the new information about his father's past, while Olivia grappled with her own conflicting emotions. It was during this tumultuous time that Olivia found solace in her growing relationship with James, the assistant manager. His steady presence and unwavering support became a beacon of stability in the storm of her family drama. One evening, as they walked hand in hand through a quiet park, James turned to Olivia with a serious expression. "Olivia, there's something I need to tell you," he began, echoing the words her father had spoken days earlier. Olivia felt a flutter of anxiety in her stomach. "What is it, James?" He took a deep breath. "I've been offered a promotion, a big one. They want me to manage a new Hawkins stores in Chicago." Olivia felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her feet. "Chicago? But that's so far away." James nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know. And I've been struggling with this decision because I'm falling in love with you, Olivia. The thought of leaving you and Emily, just when we're starting to build something special, it's tearing me apart." Olivia's heart raced at his confession. She realized with sudden clarity that she was falling in love with him too. But with all the complications in her life, her newly discovered family, her daughter's needs, her own career, could she really consider uprooting everything for a chance at love? As they stood there, the weight of the decision hanging between them, Olivia's phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "Need to talk, it's urgent." Apologizing to James, Olivia quickly called her friend. Sophie's voice was trembling when she answered. "Liv, I got the results of my prenatal tests. There's a problem with the baby. The doctors are recommending. They're saying I should consider termination." Olivia's heart broke for her friend. "Oh, Sophie, I'm so sorry. What do you want to do?" Sophie's voice cracked with emotion. "I don't know, Liv. I'm scared. I need you." Without hesitation, Olivia assured her friend she'd be right there. Turning to James, she explained the situation. His response was immediate and supportive. "Go to her. Your friend needs you. We can talk more later." As Olivia rushed to Sophie's side, her mind whirled with the events of the past few weeks. Her life, once so settled and predictable, had become a whirlwind of emotional upheavals and life-altering decisions. In the days that followed, Olivia found herself at the center of a web of interconnected lives and choices. She supported Sophie through her difficult decision about the pregnancy, stood by her father as he worked to mend his relationship with Daniel, and grappled with her own feelings for James and the possibility of a future together. It was during a quiet moment at home as she watched Emily doing her homework at the kitchen table that Olivia had an epiphany. Life was messy, complicated, and often painful, but it was also full of unexpected joys, second chances, and the opportunity for growth and redemption. With this realization came a sense of peace and purpose. Olivia knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, whether it was helping her father make amends for his past mistakes, supporting Sophie through her pregnancy journey, or taking a leap of faith with James, she was strong enough to face them. In the end, Olivia made a series of decisions that would shape the course of her life and the lives of those around her. She encouraged James to accept the promotion in Chicago, but with a twist. She and Emily would join him, starting a new chapter of their lives together in a new city. She helped Sophie connect with support groups for parents facing similar challenges, standing by her friend's decision to continue with the pregnancy despite the difficulties ahead. And perhaps most importantly, she facilitated a family meeting with James Sr., Daniel, and herself, where they all agreed to move forward with honesty and openness, working to rebuild trust and forge stronger bonds as a family. As Olivia packed up her apartment, preparing for the move to Chicago, she came across an old photo album she hadn't looked at in years. Inside, she found a picture of her mother, young and radiant, standing in front of a small bookstore. With a jolt, Olivia realized she recognized the street in the background. It was just a few blocks from where she now stood. Could it be that all these years, the key to understanding her mother's story had been right here in Boston? Olivia's heart raced with the possibility of uncovering more about her mother's life and the circumstances that led to her parents' separation. But as she closed the album and placed it carefully in a moving box, she knew that this mystery would have to wait for another day. For now, she had a new life to build with James, with Emily, and with the complex, imperfect, but ultimately loving family she had discovered. And as she looked out the window at the Boston skyline, Olivia felt a sense of excitement for the future and gratitude for the twists of fate that had brought her to this moment. The story of the Hawkins family was far from over. There were still secrets to uncover, wounds to heal, and new chapters to write, but Olivia knew that whatever came next, she would face it with courage, compassion, and the unshakable belief that love, in all its messy, complicated forms, was the greatest mystery and the greatest gift of all. As she closed the door on her old apartment for the last time, Olivia stepped forward into a future bright with possibility, ready to embrace whatever adventures and challenges lay ahead.